Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. If you're joining us from a different time zone, thank you for joining us for our third webinar in our ongoing series, Implementing a Virtual Gala. This week, we're focusing on sponsorship, fund a need, and of course, we're always going to touch on a couple of top tips. Before we dive into the content of this week's webinar, let's get some introductions. I am Greg Quiroga. I am the founder of Stellar Fundraising Auctions. I've been working with nonprofit organizations in the Bay Area and beyond since 2004. Became a virtual gala consultant and expert in March of 2020. Seems like so long ago now. Since then, I've raised over $2 million online, and the number continues to go up as we continue to work with more events in a virtual space. I have a couple of co-presenters with me again today, and if you joined us for our last webinar, I promise this time you will get to see their smiling faces. If you weren't here before, just know we never suffer any technical difficulties on any of our webinars. Be joined by Beth Sandifer, another virtual gala expert. She's the founder of Beth Sandifer Events. Beth's practical guide to conducting a virtual gala remains the most relevant, even though it is over a month old. And at this point, everything is changing on a day-to-day basis. So having content that remains strong that long is just a testament to her knowledge and wisdom. She's doing more virtual galas in the Bay Area than anyone else. She and I worked on an event this past weekend. We'll be sharing some expertise from that, as well as other events that she has coming up. Joined by our other presenter, Ed Gold, another stellar fundraising auctioneer. Ed has been conducting fundraising events for well over a decade now. He's presented at the National Auctioneer Association's Benefit Auction Summit, and he always is full of creative ideas, and we look forward to sharing all of them with you today. The housekeeping. As always, this webinar will be recorded and made available to all attendees after the fact, so we're always honored if you feel compelled to take notes, but we're not pressuring you to do so. And if you happen to be watching a recorded version of this webinar and would like to be part of the live conversation, please sign up for our announcement list at stellarsf.com. Today, we are going to cover sponsorship for a virtual gala. Going to talk about planning and implementing a virtual fund a need, cover this week's top tips for a virtual gala. And of course, we're hoping that all of this creates questions that you have, and hopefully we will have answers for them. So let's start at the top. It's sponsorship for a virtual gala. And we're entering a phase now where we're moving from pivot to plan. In March, April, and most of May, the organizations that were doing virtual galas, they had their event all lined up. They had the auction lots ready, they had graphics all designed, ticket sales had already happened, and their sponsors were already lined up. And they simply, well, not so simply, but they essentially moved their event from an in-person event to a virtual event. Now what we're starting to see are organizations beginning to plan their virtual gala from the ground up. They need to go out and solicit auction lots. And if you weren't part of our last webinar about creating our auction lots for a virtual event, please see that. Links are on our website at stellarsf.com. And you need to solicit sponsorship for your event. And the obvious question is, will sponsors support a virtual gala? And we spent some time trying to come up with data about virtual sponsorships. And one of the things that Beth pointed out in our rehearsals is that it's all skewed by pivot versus plan. The majority of the data that we could pull right now, so if we went back and looked at this previous weekend's events, all of that data would be for events that already had sponsors lined up, and they took those sponsors with them to a virtual event. So for the sake of this discussion, I decided to take a look at sponsorship from a higher level. And it starts by saying that corporations want to be involved in their communities. The nonprofit source did a poll in 2018 and found that 89% of the corporations they polled believe partnering with nonprofit organizations leverages their ability to improve the community. Beyond that, sponsorship is and remains a form of marketing. 90% of corporations in that same poll indicated that partnering with reputable nonprofit organizations enhances their brand. So they believe they're helping their communities, and they believe that they are helping themselves by helping good causes. Wells Fargo, included in one of these polls, was they go out and look at all of the nonprofit events that they can find online. They looked at 28,000 events last year and found that Wells Fargo supported the most. They partnered with over 700 nonprofits nationwide last year. Sponsorship gives companies the chance to look good by supporting good organizations. This doesn't mean you should all go ask Wells Fargo for money, by the way, but it does mean that large corporations like to be involved at the local level. So back to the question at hand, will sponsors support a virtual gala? And our short answer is yes. We believe that you can successfully convert sponsors from your in-person gala to a virtual gala, but nobody is saying it's going to be easy. All the same work still has to be done. You still have to do cultivation. It still comes down to relationships. You want peer-to-peer asks whenever you possibly can, and it still means you need to be able to provide tangible benefits to sponsoring your event.
So let's talk about what benefits sponsors usually receive at a live event. This should be a list that is familiar to most of you. It's a lot of logo placement on the invitation and the program, maybe on the step and repeat. You could also be giving your sponsors access to a VIP reception or experience. Maybe they're placing a logoed item in the gift bag, and maybe they're simply just getting better table placement and a table gift or premium wine. So at first glance, Gala sponsorship for a virtual event provides a similar looking but trimmed down list of benefits. You may think that you're losing all of the physical items and just keeping logo placement, and that can feel underwhelming. But there are some key ways that virtual galas are radically different. So a virtual gala is going to deliver to you a much more attentive audience than an in-person gala. And we are not trying to hate on an in-person event, because trust me, we miss doing them. But how many times have you seen one of your early speakers get up on the stage and say, and now we'd like to thank our sponsors, to a room full of guests who immediately start talking, eating, drinking, or otherwise ignoring what's happening on the stage. So your virtual gala attendees are going to be much more attentive audience, because though they will have some distractions in their home, it's not the same level of distraction with the chatter with their upper table guests. They're going to be able to hear everything that's coming from the stage, and they will be much more focused on the program. Another way that the virtual galas are different is that they just have a lot longer staying power. Most live events, guests will see signage and programs, but then they walk away and they leave programs on their tables and they never see those signs again. These recordings of virtual galas, once it's on the internet, it kind of lives on the internet forever unless you physically take it down. And even then it's questionable. So these events are getting a significant higher number of views than you would typically have audience members in a ballroom. The one on the bottom of the list, the Manhattan Beach Education Foundation, that was an event Greg and I did on Saturday, and it already has over 1,000 views. And that's a private link. So people are forwarding the links to their colleagues and their friends, wanting to share the good work that you're all doing. And we're getting feedback from sponsors that they feel like they are actually getting more visibility because of the increased page views and the longer access to the recorded programs. And what is really exciting in the sponsorship world is that there are new opportunities emerging that virtual galas can provide. So first up is your pre-show content. So most virtual galas are including some kind of pre-event loop as part of the broadcast, where guests can log on as they're logging on and waiting for the show to start. And this can run anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes prior to your main program content. This gives you an opportunity for a captive audience where you can include your sponsor logos full screen. I have some clients who are now starting to treat this pre-show broadcast in the same way that they would have sold advertising in the printed program. Instead of doing a full page or a half page, a quarter page, they're selling 30-second and 1-minute spots, like ad spots, in the pre-event program. If you are doing a fully produced gala, meaning that you are using a production studio and have the ability to do graphics and lower thirds, you have then the opportunity to have a sponsor logo incorporated at any part of the program that you see fit. You could have your speakers in front of a virtual step and repeat that includes sponsor logos. You could pop logo graphics up at any portion in the program. You could even have your entire auction brought to you by a single sponsor. Sponsor videos are another thing that a lot of organizations are doing to give greater visibility and a face to the sponsors. So these are 15 to 30-second videos that your sponsors are recording, talking about why supporting your organization is so important to them. These can be used in pre-promotion and all of your pre-event marketing. You can encourage your sponsors to cross-post to their audiences and help build their PR and also drive eyes to your event. And then you can also incorporate sponsor videos into your actual program. It's great as transitional material in between different program elements once you've got your show going. Another thing that you can do is to have an auction lot sponsor. So this is another great way to give visibility to sponsors by giving them the opportunity to sponsor a particular auction lot. So I totally stole this idea from my friends at the Auction of Washington Wines because I think they're brilliant at it. They get corporations to match the bidding at individual auction lots. So they'll get the bidding going on a trip to Hawaii and, get the bidding up to a certain point and say, hey, if we can get this up to $10,000, Alaska Airline is going to match that $10,000. So you as an organization end up making more from that auction lot without having to double the auction lot, and they get the very targeted visibility of hey, we're doing this good thing and helping this organization raise more money. There are also sponsor underwriting opportunities in virtual galas. So one thing, more and more organizations are starting to do attendee deliveries. So folks are delivering wines to go with dinner that you would drink while you're watching the show, or catered meals. I have an organization that's talking about delivering plug-in disco balls so that you can have a dance party as part of their program. All of that can be underwritten by a sponsor, including if you wanted to put together your traditional physical swag bag and have those delivered to attendees. That's a sponsor underwriting opportunity. If you don't want to do a physical swag bag, you could also do a digital swag bag. So anything that can be distributed as digital content could be included in a digital swag bag. So gift cards and coupon codes, any kind of downloadable document or brochure or video, access to special classes. There are paid services that can provide the framework for a digital swag bag for you, but the DIY version is just you assemble all of your links and collaterals yourself and distribute it to your attendees via whatever email client you're using or a password protected page on your website. In a similar vein, you can also include a virtual photo booth that could be underwritten by a sponsor. So guests would take selfies or other photos and submit them via either a browser, a service in a browser, or via text to a special number. Those photos get collected into a viewing gallery that you can share with attendees. And in all of these services, you can create your custom backgrounds and use your hashtags and include your branding, include your sponsor logos. If it's the virtual photo booth has been brought to you by Wells Fargo, whoever, that's another branding opportunity, not just for your event, but a sponsor underwriting opportunity as well. And then lastly, have your sponsors host your pre-event gatherings. If you're doing any kind of virtual wine tasting or VIP happy hour, you can have these underwritten by sponsors. If there's some kind of, in the example of a virtual wine tasting, if there's a delivery that needs to go with it, or if you just want to have a representative from the sponsor that's helping to host the event, any of your pre-event gatherings are opportunities for sponsor underwriting.
And we talk a lot about creative sponsorship recognition opportunities. And one of the ideas that we had was to, let's have working with an organization that does animal rescue. And we talked about having a parade of dogs wearing the sponsors' logos go across the stage. And you can either do something like that live, which means you need a second camera and you really need the dogs to behave well, or you can pre-record it and have it in the can and ready to go. But and it doesn't mean that every animal organization should do it, but I definitely don't think anybody's going to forget this little puppy. And I work with another organization in Oregon that has a number of animals on its property, and those animals are always out with their handlers so that people can see them on the way into their gala. And that's what people really remember is oh, well, this year's High Desert Rendezvous, are we going to be able to see the animals if we're doing it virtually? And we're well, we could have an animal moment, and that animal moment, as people are logging on and we're beginning the virtual gala, could be brought to you by a sponsor. Similarly, if you work with kids, you could have kids or students thanking the sponsors. Auction of Washington Wines does a great job of engaging sponsors, of utilizing a very engaging sponsors videos. So they have a kid playing with an Alaska Airlines jet, and they have another kid running a boardroom meeting. And those videos are really engaging, and they give the opportunity to highlight those sponsors. You could have a segment sponsor. This portion of my presentation is brought to you by Beth Sandifer Events. You could have a fund a need sponsor and use one of your major sponsors as the fund a need sponsor. And we keep using Wells Fargo just because they're everywhere, not because we have any relationship with Wells Fargo. But you could have the fund a need brought to you by Wells Fargo and have it be a challenge grant, or have Wells Fargo do a challenge grant at a particular level, which is starting to dig a little bit into implementing a virtual fund a need. So let's go there. Because one thing we know about virtual galas so far is that the fund a need is carrying the virtual day. Live auction items, for the most part, are doing okay, but they're doing okay like 70 to 80% of okay. It's the fund a need that is outperforming expectations, exceeding them. And there are a lot of ways to interpret that. But for the sake of this discussion, let's say it really means that you need to take the time to craft an engaging fund a need. Fundraising has never been, if you build it, they will come. And it's more like once engaged, they will pledge. And a virtual fund a need still requires all the same pre-event work, preceding, etc. The 7 keys to a successful fund a need still apply. Has to be an honest need that's emotionally engaging. You have to market it in advance, create a sense of urgency within your community. You have to quantify that need so pledges of every level feel like they're going to empower you to make a difference in the world. It's nice to have a stretch goal so that people feel like you've challenged people to rise to the occasion and make something special happen. And as always, you need at least one, if not many, lead donors lined up in advance. And 7 keys is a presentation that we've given many times before, so I'm not about to repeat it here, but if you've never seen it, I'll make sure that there is a link to download a copy of it included in tomorrow's follow-up email that also has the link to this video. And I'll make sure that that link includes, I'll make sure that that email sent tomorrow includes a link to stream that class on a pay-per-view course. Having said that, the shift to virtual is going to require a few key adjustments, but it's going to offer some opportunities as well. And what I need to do is make sure that I give Ed the opportunity to speak. Here he goes.
So let's start with placement. Our recommendation is to move the fund a need to the front end of your fundraising. Now, normally we'd want to use the auction as a way to build momentum and establish our credibility. But that was with a captive crowd and a radically different bidding process that is more engaging for the entire crowd. Now, very few attendees at a live event are going to get up and leave their tables during your fundraising to the stares of their table mates, but that scenario does not apply when you're sitting at home in front of your laptop. As long as you're logged in, you're still there, even if you're having a snack in your kitchen. So we think you should get to the fund a need in the first 1/3 of your program and should be asking for pledges within 15 to 20 minutes of starting your virtual gala while you have as many fresh viewers as possible. Now, obviously, this is going to impact your program as a whole. So it means your program needs to be laser focused on engaging your crowd and motivating them to support your cause. Now, it doesn't mean everyone has to follow the same exact template for doing a virtual gala. Every gala is different. But whatever happens on stage needs to be driving your narrative, and even more relevant for a product that is going to be consumed entirely on screen. So then the goal is to engage your attendees. The question is, why are they there? Because they have nothing better to do on a Saturday night? We hope not. Or is it because they believe in what you do and want to enable your work? So engage them with compelling stories of your work, your successes, and your needs, along with praising and reminding them of what they have done over the years in support of your organization. Because of you is a very strong statement. Use it. Weave that thread of messaging and support through the program as a whole, especially at the front end. You need to maximize your medium for emotional and financial impact. This year is your chance to really highlight the amazing work you do and the lives your supporters help change with things like video testimonial from your clients, slideshows of your work, video of your service providers like teachers, doctors, nurses, or frontline workers, and images relevant to your fund a need on screen during the pre-roll.
And we'll touch on quantification of need because that is extreme. It's always relevant. It's part of the 7 keys, but it's also important because it empowers your supporters by letting them know how their contributions can enable your work by offering compelling examples of what each pledge increment can do. So for example, in the image here, you can see that $2,500 provides move-in expenses to get someone out of into their own apartment. Or $100 could send an underserved child back to school with a new backpack. And in the past, we basically had this in two places, right? We had this in the program so that people could look at it, and we had it on screen during the Fund the Need itself. But now you can have it interspersed, use it everywhere that you possibly can, or that makes sense for your design, but you have the potential to be getting this message out there much more consistently and utilizing it to get people engaged, right? So during the pre-roll, you could intersperse what the money does along with all those sponsor logos and your tech support and all that sort of like relevant information. You could also be priming the pump for getting people involved in your Fund the Need. You could have it in a news feed scroll at the bottom of the screen if you're doing lower thirds. You could have it on an on-screen window during the Fund the Need. And, again, I've said this so many times, like one of the big challenges of this whole virtual fundraising auction and virtual Fund the Need thing is that nobody's done this before. There's no playbook. We have to invent this as we go. And what's utterly awesome is nobody's done this before. We get to invent this as we go. So be creative, come up with new ways. I look forward to utilizing one of your examples in a future webinar to say, look what they did. Wasn't that cool? Challenge grants. Mentioning a challenge grant in a fundraising appeal results in a 71% increase in the response rate for written appeals and a 51% increase in the average donation amount. So do challenge grants work in a virtual Fund the Need? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. And obviously a challenge grant for the entire Fund the Need is ideal, right? But it's not always easy to get access to that level of support. And in the past, what we would have done was we would have said, okay, we've got a challenge. We have Wells Fargo, not to keep using them as the example, but they always do a challenge grant at the Sun Valley Center for the Arts Wine Auction. And we always use it at the $1,000 level. And over the years, it's gone up. But last year, we had a $40,000 challenge grant at the $1,000 level, thanks to Wells Fargo. And so we do all the levels, and then we get there and we say, oh, okay, now we've got this announcement. Well, the challenge with that kind of challenge grant right now is that when we come on screen during a virtual Fund the Need and say, now who will pledge $10,000, we don't have control of the process to the level that we can make sure that people are only pledging $10,000 at that point. People look at their phone and see all the levels available. And as soon as we say who will pledge $10,000, somebody pledges $500. And that's great. We appreciate every one of those pledges. So what you can do is acknowledge that loss of control of that process and find a way to utilize a challenge grant within it that makes the most sense for you and your crowd. One way is to use a challenge grant to get to the finish line. So what you see right here on the screen is a picture of us getting to the finish line on Saturday night. We knew that we had a $50,000 challenge grant, and we set the stretch goal of $500,000. And so when we got to $400,000, I announced that we had a very generous $50,000 challenge grant, and every pledge from that point forward be doubled to get us to our $500,000 goal. And it motivated people. It picked the pledging back up, and it pushed us to the end to get that $50,000 challenge grant and get to the $500,000 goal. You can also use a challenge grant on a timer. So let's say right when you're opening up and you want to try and get people motivated and giving, you say, we've got a $30,000 challenge grant on the table for the next 2 minutes. Can we get $30,000 in pledges in the next 120 seconds? And you could probably invent a system to do a challenge grant. There are a lot of different systems you can invent. I am a guy who loves over-engineering complicated solutions for simple problems. So you could probably come up with a system to say, okay, well, we could keep track of who was making pledges at the $5,000 level and have a challenge grant only at the $5,000 level. But really, aim for simple online. There's enough other challenges that are going to come up with the interface that you don't want to complicate things by over-engineering solutions for yourself. We can talk more about Fund the Need in Q&A if there's any specific questions, but we are going to move on to today's tips. It's an ever-evolving list. We are literally learning on screen as we go, but I think the most important thing right now my tip for every organization who is considering a virtual gala or doing a virtual gala in the upcoming months is booking your AV solution or your audiovisual partner is the new equivalent to booking your ballroom. And if you don't do it early, somebody else might book your date. AV companies are booking fast. So whoever it is you're using, whether it's the Lux or any one of the other AV companies who are doing virtual productions, book your room, book your AV immediately.
And the next tip, this one comes up a lot, is around raffles in a virtual gala. And it is still possible to do a raffle in a virtual gala. If you're in California, you can't sell your tickets online, but you can sell your tickets still via snail mail, where someone downloads a form on your website, sends you a check, you send them a ticket back, and then you can draw the winner online. You can also, in California, you can do a raffle legally that doesn't require any purchase to participate. So if you had someone who was maybe purchasing wine or a snack box or something that's getting delivered to them and they get a raffle ticket along with that purchase, you could do that as long as you had the language stated out that if anyone else wanted to participate in the raffle, that no purchase was necessary and you would have to maybe give some free tickets away. But it can still be done. Tip number 3 is related to AV, is to get the link for your broadcast as early as possible so that you can be including this in all of your marketing promotions. So even if you're just going to be streaming the event to YouTube, there's a way to go ahead and set up your live event on YouTube and you have that link. You want to help your attendees plan on watching it on the biggest screen in their house. It's going to get you out of some tech issues early once you've got that location set up. So do that as early as possible.
So here's 3 words: rehearse, rehearse, and rehearse, and then rehearse again. The best way to find problems is to find problems. Presenters need to learn how to look at the camera and how they look on the camera. A new technology like a new camera or a mic needs to be tested before you go live. Do one rehearsal at the same time of day as your event is planned.
Rehearsals also give you a chance to get your giggles out of the way. Tip number 5, look, your supporters, they are hungry for engagement. It's always the next thing or the most recent thing that's always top of my mind. So the Manhattan Beach Education Foundation, the event that Beth and I just worked on this past weekend, they saw a 15 times increase in bids on their online auction in the first 24 hours. And this is an apples to apples comparison because they always do their silent auction as an online bidding on an online bidding platform. It's always mobile bidding for their silent auction. It's always mobile bidding for their fund to need. They saw a 15 times increase in bids in the first 24 hours. They also sold over 250 virtual tastings. So if you're thinking like, oh, I have to have an event that's free and everybody's going to attend for free, they had virtual tastings. They work with 6 different partners ranging from high-end wines to local tequila and breweries, and to do virtual tastings that ranged from $400 to $75 per household and had the wine shipped to them. It's an amazing amount of engagement, and it just shows, come up with something creative, come up with staggered ticket pricing for that, and enable, sort of make it feel as egalitarian as possible, and people are going to participate.
Now, if you're going to call out names of pledges in the fund and need, make it egalitarian. What I mean by that is acknowledge pledges from all the levels, from the highest to the lowest, and let everyone who pledged know they all matter.
Tip number 7 is to start building all of your graphic assets early. I know most events I do that are live events, frequently the PowerPoint presentation is one of the last things that gets built in the day or two before you actually hold the event. In these virtual platforms, like, you really need to, there's a whole meeting that should be developed to building out what visuals are going to be on the screen at any given time. And you will be designing differently based on how those things appear on the screen. So you want to start doing that early so that when you do your rehearsals, you're looking at finished products and you're not redesigning your event as you're also rehearsing. Tip number 8 is to give a cheerleader in your chat room some sort of prompts. So most any platform that you're going to be pushing your broadcast feed out to is going to have some kind of chat bar where we're seeing amazing amount of engagement from attendees where they're wanting to, again, interact with each other and engage. I think an important role of someone on your committee or your staff or a volunteer is to be a cheerleader in the chats where they're encouraging that engagement. And if you pre-write some prompts that they can ask people, like, hey, what are you drinking? Or, who wants to go to Hawaii this year? Whatever it is, whatever's relevant to your programming, but just like pre-write some things so that they're not having to come up with stuff on the fly.
Our final tip is to provide closure. Be sure to wrap up your show. And it's come up a couple of times now, and it's important to have a game plan to either announce how much you've raised and celebrate your crowd for coming over the top and doing amazing work, or at the very least to give some sense of closure that does more than simply end the stream and get on with it, because there's this real sense of, oh, the show's over. And so before we get into our question or our Q&A session for the day, while we still have everybody on, I would love to find out from as many as possible of you who are attending, how are you learning about our webinars? Are you, some of you are our clients and we appreciate that. Others are on our mailing list. Others are getting forwarded the email, but so far we've got a third of the votes are in. Keep them coming. Obviously I'll talk all day, but if we can get everybody just another, say, 20 seconds or so to see if we can get over. Can we get over the 75%? Can we get over the 75% vote? Who's going to be the voter who brings us on home and gets us all the way to 75% of the votes? We are, see, now my son would be so proud. You stopped at 71%. Give it 10 more seconds, 9, 8, 7. Interesting to see. But okay, so many of you are clients of ours. A lot of you are on our mailing list, and other people are getting sent the invite. We appreciate however it is that you are finding us. We truly do. And that said, we're going to move into the Q&A section. I am going to bring up everybody's videos so that you can see us this week. Here we go. Compelling content, right? Here we go.
Yeah.
Hey, there we are. Hey, everybody, how are you? Now, to ask questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Currently, there are no questions. No questions. You did such a great job, Beth and Ed, that nobody has anything they want to ask. I think everybody's looking for chat, and they're realizing chat's button, so because here comes the chat one.
Well, while we're waiting, I'll just add about your tip number 9 about closure is that the same way that we do a pre-roll before an event starts, like I like to also do a post-roll, even if it's just for a few minutes to kind of ease everyone out. And, to reference the Manhattan Beach Education Foundation again, on Saturday night, we actually had throughout the event, guests were submitting photos via social media using their hashtag. And we created a special display that we showed like after the event had closed, where we were able to show photos that people had sent us, like engaging with the event. So that was a nice little closure piece that we were able to include.
It was. Okay, here come questions. The first question is, what's the optimum time for a virtual gala in terms of duration? Anybody?
I mean, I say 45 minutes to an hour. I think anything longer than an hour, and it's hard to keep people's attention for longer than that.
I agree.
And so that means if you're doing 45 minutes to an hour and we're encouraging you to get to your fundraising in the first 15 minutes, I mean, you're really like, you still need to come up with plenty of other stuff to do for that hour. You don't want to just have your stream on and be like, oh, okay, look, here's an office, but you can have a good program. Do you have any videos of fund needs from a previous fundraiser so we can see how it works? You mean from a virtual fund need, or do you mean a person? I'm presuming you mean virtual. Yeah, what we need, so one of the challenges with doing virtual events is that sometimes organizations want to protect their donors' privacy. So for example, the Manhattan Beach event that we just did, they've kept that link private. So we need to ask if we can share that link with other organizations, because what you're seeing on screen are full names of donors in lots of places. But we'll find a link and provide it in tomorrow's wrap-up email for sure. What dollar level should the fund need be?
Well, you probably want to base it, as Greg said earlier, you want to start with a lead donor. You want to make sure the first number you ask for gets some kind of response. So most of my clients end up doing it that way. They find that lead donor, they set that down. Now, it doesn't mean you can't go out on a limb and start a little higher than that, but at least knowing that you have some confidence that the first number you ask for will get a response.
Well, and the thing is you know that first number you ask for, somebody else is going to pledge a different amount anyway. If you have a $25,000, I mean, there's no harm in putting a $25,000 pledge amount on your fund the need button, because there's not going to be this moment where you say, now who will pledge $25,000, and there's this dead space, right? So, because you say, okay, well, who's going to pledge 5 or 10 or 15 or 25, and somebody's going to pledge $100, right? And yay, hallelujah, we love this virtual platform. You just roll with it as it happens. I see one you'd like to answer, Beth.
Yeah, snag that one. So question coming in, what is your feeling about entertainment in the program versus just sticking to your message and story? So, you know, I love entertainment. Again, you don't want, like, every gala is going to be different, and you want yours to look different and not like just a cookie cutter, but you just want to make sure that if you're including entertainment, you're not sacrificing the fundraising elements. So there was a good example. There was a Kiwanis group in Oregon, like Mount Hood Kiwanis, I think, that they incorporated like camp counselors, like singing songs, like on the guitar, like, and it broke up the event, but it also spoke directly to like, these are the counselors at the camp that like you are funding. Other organizations, I mean, I have one coming up in a few weeks where we've got like a Cirque du Soleil group that's going to do a 20-minute pre-recorded segment, and we're just putting it at the end. So we're getting all of our fundraising accomplished first, and then saying like, now we'd like to have you like join the party, you know, and watch this performance that's been designed for you.
Can you speak a bit about your experience with selling virtual gala tables or asking pre-committed sponsors to host a virtual gala? Well, and I think that was the whole point of today's conversation, right? Was like, what we've seen so far have been organizations shifting their event from in-person to virtual. And now we're talking about, okay, are people going to go ahead with that? And the experience so far has been that sponsors still want to be involved. People still want to be buying virtual tables. If you're going to sell virtual gala tables, what you need to be doing is providing something in exchange for that. Because normally in a live setting, what you'd be offering is a table with food and wine and probably placement. The higher level the table sponsor, the closer they are to the stage. And now if you're just having a quote virtual gala that you're not offering anything in exchange for sponsorship or table sponsorship, it's going to be harder to sell those tables. So again, to go back to this last weekend, they had virtual tastings, which you could pivot that to be a virtual table host and say, okay, for $150 per person at the platinum level for table sponsorship, you're going to get this meal with this wine delivered to your house. For $50 per person sponsorship, you're going to go pick up these burritos and this 6-pack of beer. I mean, I think it's really going to be, the onus is on you and the amount of creativity you can bring to the table, all puns intended, to come up with creative partnerships with restaurants or caterers and pre-sale. Now you've got to do all this pre-sale in advance, right? In order to be part of these virtual tastings for this last weekend's event, you had to book a week in advance so that the vineyards and the tequila taster and everybody else could ship it all to you.
And I will say that that's going to change too as we get sort of further along in the year. Right now I'm working with the SF Parks Alliance on their Party for the Parks, and they right now, so their event is in September, and they currently have permission from the health department that they can do some limited things outside. So they have sponsor packages available for, you know, limited number, but where you will get basically a luxury tent set up in Golden Gate Park that you'll get to go watch the virtual party on an iPad or device that they're going to supply, but you get to like have a party with you and your 6 friends in a luxury tent with a self-serve bar and charcuterie and caviar service, so that they're still maintaining all of the social distancing and, you know, safety protocols, but they're still able to give a luxury experience. And for anyone who isn't buying into one of those larger sponsor packages, they're still charging that you have to donate at a certain level to be able to even get access to the event, to be able to watch it virtually. So we're seeing that start to emerge again as you know, restrictions are getting lifted.
We have a specific question for you, Ed. It's Heather from Huckleberry, who is wondering if you're finding people getting tired of virtual events. Does it make more sense to spend time on grants or individual gifts, or are people going to want to gather virtually to celebrate our work, particularly during holiday and giving season? What are we hearing in terms of virtual fatigue?
I don't think that there's virtual fatigue yet. I think that supporters for organizations like Huckleberry are looking for ways to support this year, as they are every single year. And if this is the way it's going to be, I think that they're on board. What I think is the burnout's going to come from those who are still at the first level of what these virtual events started to look like. You know, with people sitting at home and talking in their screen like this, or what have you, in dark rooms with it. So I think that they're expecting a little more of a professional kind of a thing and something of interest. So it's well done, and so you can get your message across. So I haven't witnessed any fatigue. I will talk to my compadres here and see what their feedback is, but everyone's actually looking forward to seeing if it works and how it works. And the bottom line is they still need the funds. That hasn't changed.
Well, and we tend to get kind of focused in, right? Because we're doing this so much that we tend to think like that this is the view, right? That everybody is living this same view that we're having right now, and that we're all participating in numerous virtual fundraising events on a day or weekly basis. And the truth is, like, when we started this conversation, I presumed that so much of what I was saying, everybody had already heard, because I've been nose down on this for 3 months now, right? And people are like, oh my gosh, this is great information. And in that same vein, not all of your supporters are attending all these other virtual galas, right? And so to Ed's point, you know, I think the main point is like, how like the number of virtual galas that are happening right now, how is this any different than any other year when every weekend you can attend 5 or 6 fundraising auctions on any night of the week in the Bay Area? It's not, right? So it means you still have to have compelling ask and a reason for doing it, and getting everybody there. And you need to do the same, do cultivation and everything else. But the results that we're seeing are people want to do something and feel like they're coming together as a community, especially while we're sheltering in place.
Plus, you can do this one with flip-flops on.
Yeah.
Hey, Beth, suggestions for shipping packages to winning bidders post-event. Should you do it? Do you charge shipping on top of winning bid amounts?
So yeah, it depends a little bit on your auction items. If you've got mostly gift certificates or small items, like that might be something that you want to just absorb the cost of shipping. If you're shipping out larger items, if you've got wines, for example, like I would charge shipping for those. That's something I've been doing all the way in live events as well. If things aren't picked up, like we will arrange shipping, but it's at the cost of the bidder. So I think that you would just need to have an internal conversation about, do you want to absorb all those shipping charges, or do you want to pass on shipping charges for the larger items to your winning bidders? And if you're passing on the shipping charges to your winning bidders, just make sure there's a statement somewhere in your auction collateral that that is what is happening.
And make sure that if you're shipping wine, that you have all of the rules and regulations associated with that dialed in. We are not lawyers. We do not play them on Zoom, and we definitely know that there are a lot of restrictions. So if you're dealing with liquor and alcohol, it's easiest to just have your people come in and pick that stuff up. Yep. Does that 45 minutes to an hour factor in pre-show segments? No, it doesn't. We're talking about 45 minutes to an hour of focused program, right, Beth?
Yeah, and most people, and to add on to that too, most events so far have been keeping whatever their Friday or Saturday night date was and starting the event at approximately the same time. Some are maybe moving it forward. If it was a 7 p.m. event, they're starting it at 6, but it's pretty close to their original date and starting time. And then, yeah, the 45 minutes to an hour is just your actual program portion, not including any pre or post event role that you have happening.
And everybody's favorite question, what time, what day, when should we be doing our event? And this one, it comes back to what type of event are you doing? Do you have parents who need to get their kids to bed before they can participate? Or do you think the kids are going to be there? Are you having food and wine involved? Ed,
sorry,
Beth, anything to add?
I was reading Q&A. I lost track of it.
Yeah, no, it gets cut. It's easy. See, this whole virtual thing, it's
I mean,
easy to get hung up on reading other stuff. If we do fundraising in the first third, should that include not only the fund the need, but also the live auction? Hey, Marshall, good to see you. No, that's, and one of the things that Ed mentioned, but I'm an auctioneer, so I love to repeat things other people say. One of the things that we advocate is for doing the fund the need first in the fundraising, and then getting to the live auction. And how you intersperse the live auction throughout that really is going to depend on the focus of your crowd. I mean, we're not very deep into this, but we've had it numerous ways where past Saturday night did the fund the need and then got straight to the auction. And then between groups of auction lots interspersed other programmatic details. Normally I would say, like, don't break up the auction. It's like a steam train. You have to build all that momentum back up and shovel all that coal, but virtually it's a little different. And so you can take little breaks between and break the auction up, and it's not going to hinder you. With virtual galas, do you see people arriving promptly on time?
yes.
Sorry to clarify. I mean the experience. You know, I
Let's
love
just
simple
say you're
answers.
logged in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So someone's
Sorry.
asking a question about virtual gala tables and if they
Yes.
could be done as like a breakout room or something special about a virtual table. So this is kind of a longer answer. It depends a little bit on the platform that you're using to broadcast your event. And this is going to pick up one of the questions in chat too. So we are not typically recommending Zoom or other teleconferencing software as the channel that you're using to broadcast your event, because those are going to look like meetings. It's going to look like a webinar. And that's where those breakout rooms, like where it's as part of the same platform, they've logged into one place and they go to a breakout room. That's more of a teleconferencing thing. We're advocating that you produce your event in broadcast quality software that then you're pushing the experience out to YouTube. So everyone would be watching the video on YouTube, or it's embedded in your own website. So you lose some of that breakout room function as part of the main program. But what people are doing, there's a couple of things people are doing. Some folks are hosting pre-event happy hours that are like table gatherings. So people are getting together on Zoom, you know, in groups of 10 or 15 or whatever it is for a pre-event happy hour, and then moving over to the live broadcast that everyone is watching. And then I've also seen some organizations, particularly ones that use Classy or have other peer-to-peer functions already in whatever their donor software is, where they're having table hosts, they're enabling table hosts as peer-to-peer fundraisers to encourage their networks to be raising money for your organization. So that's the two ways I think most people are approaching virtual tables at the moment. Getting a question about during the Manhattan Wine Auction, there was a disconnect between the virtual live auction and the online. And do we recommend cross-promoting the online bidding during the live? So, I mean, one thing I will say that yes, now that all of the bidding is moving to the same online bidding software, whether that's Greater Giving or GiveSmart or whatever you're using, people are bidding in the same way for all of the items, regardless of if they're live or silent. So those lines are blurring a little bit. I've had events actually where silent auction items outsold live auction items, just because people to the bidder, it's all the same when they're looking at it in their bidding software. So I don't think it's a bad idea to cross promote your online, you know, auction, your items in your live program. You just want to look at your whole structure of your program and say, okay, if we've got 45 minutes to an hour that we're trying to get everything in, like what's going to get us the most bang for our buck and really drive the programming that way. Greg or Ed, do you?
No, I mean, for all those increased views, is that for events with paid tickets? No. So these are anybody that with a link can go look at the Caitlin Gable School auction or the any of the other events that we have referenced over the time. I think the debate over free versus paid is a good one, and I keep going back to the Berkeley rep model because I love what they did over there for their virtual gala. Was that they said anybody can attend our virtual gala who makes a donation. Donations start at $1, so that I mean, really, if you can't donate $1, then you know, you're. That's just tough.
Yourself in trouble there.
That's just tough, right? But also what it does though is it gets everybody who's watching your gala means that they are pre-qualified. They've entered into your software, they've gone through the steps, they've done everything so that when you ask people to participate, you know they're already there. But all those other views, all the other views, like the 4,000 views that we're talking about, those are free. Those all came free. Any special recommendations to smaller organizations? I think this is a recommendation for every organization, but I'll try to spin it down to smaller ones in particular. That is to create the event that maps to the culture of your organization and your crowd. So not every organization can afford to or is appropriate for them to do a big, huge produced event. The Jimmy V Foundation, they're going to do a large produced event, right? A smaller school or a smaller church organization going to do something smaller. I think the most important thing for every organization is to create an event that communicates your need effectively and motivates people to support you. Right, whatever that turns, whatever, like one of my first big realizations in this whole downturn and pandemic was that this is not the year to not be fundraising. This is the year when organizations' needs have gone up. And if you're one of those organizations, like, think about these three questions. Do your clients need you now more than ever? Do you need your supporters now more than ever? If you don't raise money this year, are you going to have a hard time surviving? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, you should be doing a fundraiser at some point. If the answer to two or more of those questions is yes, why don't you have your save the date out? Why haven't you gotten people to do this? This is not the year to take a year off from asking people for money. So for a smaller organization, I think it's always circle the wagons. Find out who your supporters are, get them on board with doing your event, and come up with a way to do your event that's going to be appropriate for you. Whether you're doing something free in Zoom, or you're broadcasting to YouTube, or you're doing a larger produced event, working with professionals like everybody you see here today, it's going to be.
I agree. You know what else, Greg? This is a perfect opportunity, a perfect time for you to get some new supporters, because remember, there's no ticket for dinner. They don't have to get dressed up and go somewhere. They just simply have to log on and see what all the hubbub is about your organization. So referrals from friends and supporters and volunteers are even more important when that message is passed out. So you know what? Why don't you log in and take a look at this organization I'm involved with? I think you might like it. So I think it opens up, as we said earlier, different opportunities and good ones.
And before we move on, there was a question in chat that I think relates to this. Someone in chat asked about, what does the AV production team do? So your AV team, whether that's internal or external, in any, gala or meeting or whatever, someone needs to be facilitating. And like today, Greg is over there with the master controls. He's running the PowerPoint. He was starting and stopping our videos. He can mute or unmute us. Like, he's facilitating this. So if you wanted to do more of the DIY lower budget option where you are just doing a Zoom meeting, you still need somebody who's controlling the meeting and is doing the playback of video, advancing slides. Like, as you start getting into more sophisticated production where maybe you're bringing in an AV team and you're doing professionally broadcast level software where all of your different camera feeds are coming into their software, and now it's the AV team that is controlling all of the playback of videos and advancing slides and showing graphics. That's going to be like a next step up in the budget. You can take it then a further step up in the budget if you want to have your key presenters come into a studio and where it's live camera work, and your AV company is working to do all the live camera work and all the switching and pushing everything out. Your AV company can also do pre-production work for you if you need videography to create your funded need videos or anything like that. Like, all of those things is where it will affect your budget. So the more complicated, the more stuff you have in there, the more you need to rely on an external AV team to help you with that, the higher the budget is going to get, but the more sophisticated your event is going to get. Like, if you're a smaller organization and you're comfortable with Zoom and you have someone in your organization who understands Zoom really well and you don't feel like you need to spend the money on AV, then great. Like, you're going to have a smaller budget. It's also just going to look different than a more professionally produced event. So it's just that's one of, I think, the big factors in terms of smaller and large organizations is what role your AV company plays.
Well, and it comes back to also what you want your product to look like. I mean, because Ed had talked about burnout, and I think, is there going to be virtual gala burnout? And we're saying that, yeah, there's gala burnout every year. There's going to be virtual gala burnout. The key is to make sure that your attendees aren't the ones who are burned out, right? Or at least that your attendees understand that your need is the one that they need to come support. In a downturn economy, people don't stop giving. They stop giving to as many organizations. And if you don't ask for money, you're going to be one of the organizations they don't give money to. Simple as that. So the question is come September or October or November, do your attendees want to be here in Zoom? Or do they want to be behind door number 1 in the living room in front of their big screen television with their food that was delivered? I mean, I just got a phone call from an organization last week. They do Pinot and pizza. I said, oh my God, does that cater to delivery or what? You know, that's an event just begging to have people sitting in their living rooms in front of a big screen television. Ballpark, how much do AV broadcast companies charge? That's a great question. And the ballpark is $3,500 for your basic, like
4,500.
4,500 for your basic streaming package to be able to take everything virtually and do it, to 7,000 to be in studio with one camera, and it goes up from there.
Yeah, it goes up. That Greg is referencing some old pricing with the company that we work with the most. So, well, because I mean, companies are getting busy, like the business is picking up, and so prices are going back up. So, I would say you need to plan anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000, depending on whether it's completely remote or you're in studio, and if they're doing additional pre-production work on your videography.
Is there a direct correlation between higher attendance, i.e. free registration with 4,000 plus people, and higher income for auction items? Concern that charging an admission fee for online attendance might hinder potential income. Well, I think it's going to come, like, if you're charging to watch your virtual gala and not offering anything in exchange other than watching your virtual gala better have a really good carrot. There better be some acoustic performance by somebody that is so enticing that everybody wants to be there. Because otherwise, if you're not offering anything else, you're going to be hard pressed to charge people to be there for that. The 4,000 plus numbers that we're referencing, those are total views over time. Those galas did not start with 4,000 views. What we're saying in that respect is that the sponsorship has longevity, because when you put a logo behind my head and people continue to see that logo over the course of weeks and months, and then we move into years of people going back and referencing a particular video to say, hey, this was our fundraiser, that sponsor is getting placement. We're not saying that those 4,000 people bid in their auction. So I think Beth has something to say.
Well, I was going to say, and the longevity, we're seeing funding donations trickle in for up to a week after the event, because the links are all staying live. People are, I'm watching the event on Saturday night, think they did a great job, and, email my friend Tessie and say, hey, Tessie, oh my gosh, you have to see this. It was so great. Tessie gets motivated, and then all of a sudden she donates in the fund a need, so we're seeing that's the kind of longevity, and that sponsors and also increased donations because, those links are staying live for longer.
But also, and because you had a number on this recently that you quoted, Beth, what's the percentage decrease in overall costs that people are spending on virtual galas versus in-person galas?
So your mileage is going to vary depending on, the event that you're holding. Some events run more lean than others, but I'm comparing numbers from my own events with colleagues in Washington and Oregon. You can produce a virtual gala for somewhere in the 10 to 20% range of what you would have spent producing a live event. So, the question about AV, you may be spending money on AV, but that's a lot cheaper than venue. You're not paying for catering and floral and all that decor and all the rentals. So, again, you're looking anywhere from 10 to 20% of what your normal expenses would be.
How hard logistically is it to deliver pizza and Pinot to all the attendees? Oh, it's a nightmare, right? Who wants to do that? But and the simple answer is have a pickup spot where attendees come in and, or have varying prices. So for this price, you have to go pick up your pizza and Pinot, sorry, Sam, and have a higher level ticket price to have it delivered so that there's lots of ways to work with it. But I think one of the restrictions you have to have in place is geographical, right? You don't want people in Oregon ordering pizza and Pinot for a Sonoma-based event, right? Unless you have relationships with Oregon pizza places, and then you just start opening up a whole different slew of logistical and technical challenges.
Just get
It also
Domino's as a
depends.
sponsor.
It also depends on the partners that you're working with. Every time so far that I've done an event where we've been delivering things to our attendees, we've been working with our catering partner or a restaurant partner, and they're already sort of set up to be able to do deliveries. You know, if it's a restaurant that's already doing to-go orders, like they've got that staffing and those resources in place. So definitely like reach out to your partners and see, hey, can you help with the logistics of the actual deliveries?
We're coming up on the hour. Are there any other questions that anybody else has that they would like to see answered? We appreciate all of you being here with us. As I've said all along, it is rewarding professionally to have people engaging with us on a continuing and ongoing basis. And as we try to evolve, having you come along with us, it has been a very interesting ride, 2020. I think we've all done more learning and growing this year than we wanted to, and look forward to the time when we get to see all of you in person again. But until then, this will suffice. And we wholeheartedly believe that this is a way that you can utilize a platform like this or an engagement like this to raise the funds that you need to continue to survive and serve your clients. So if there isn't any more, I'll just bring up the thank you slide. Oh, one last one. Thank you and be well. Of course, Maureen, we appreciate you as well. And Ed, Beth, I appreciate you guys both being here and actually getting to see your faces. Beth, I will say that last week we had a lot of people emailing after the fact wondering why we didn't get to see you sing Oklahoma. And I'm not going to ask you to do that right now. I am in no way going to ask you to do that right now, but I'm going to do one last screen share just so everybody can see our contact information. And there you have it. Thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. Until then, please do not hesitate to reach out for any questions you have. We are always here and happy to chat. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar taking place in the not too distant future on topics that we're sure are going to be interesting for everybody. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot.